Welcome to The Naked Truth. And now, your host, Bridget Barclay.
Good evening, America, and good morning, England. It's very, very early here, as always. And I forgot to put the lights on, as always. That's just live TV, isn't it? Tonight's guest is Earl Grey. Something that I'm not drinking. I'm drinking iced tea today. But Earl Grey, Earl I've spoken to a few times. Absolutely lovely character to have it in ufology. So Earl, I am going to ask him some questions because obviously he's a MUFON state director. So that's really quite interesting that you can ask him some really in-depth questions. So MUFON team director, STAR team member, and he is speaking at so many places at the moment. That he runs experiences workshops for the last two MUFON. He's hosts 3 different events in 2014 for MUFON, podcast, radio shows, TV shows, travel shows, Storming Area 51 special. Ooh, must ask him about that one. And hang on a minute, more to the point, Motor Mythbusters, Cars versus UFOs. What better can you get? I love those two things, being a total petrol head. Earl, are you there, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I am fine. Nice to see you. I love all of your bits and pieces in the background.
Oh, thank you. It's my
library,
my UFO library, my collection of various and sundry flying saucers. People tend to give you flying saucers as gifts.
I know. It's great, isn't it?
When you have the little ufologist thing after your name,
Yeah.
But I never got bored with it. I never got tired of it. Even my grandson, for Christmas, he gave me a little alien in a flying saucer, like a snow globe, and there it is.
I don't have one of those. Okay.
Oh, I have to look for one for you.
Along with the many things. So, Earl, today, we've got some pictures, we've got some history, and you've got some history within ufology. I think let's start with your mum, because your mum, your story about your mum is really, really amazing to have as a experiencer yourself. Oh, there she is. There she is. That's
looking
Mummy.
on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Probably
they are
horrified about what I'm talking about because she spent her life trying to not talk about that. But
no, I think because she couldn't back then, but now she's absolutely cheering you totally on. Believe me,
from heaven. So, if she was still here, that she would not be happy. She was very concerned about keeping her, her above top secret clearances and things like that.
Do you think so now? Even so now?
Oh, yeah, and she would be in trouble. But I'll go into that if you want. It's my origin story.
There you go. Go for it. Talk to me about
so many of us. It seems like it's UFOs the next generation. You had Star Trek the next generation, and in some ways I liked the sequel better than the original series. Maybe I don't know. Mr. Spock, he can't outdo Mr. Spock, right? But it seems like it's that with ufology. My closest friend is probably Paul Hynek, and his father was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was the science advisor of Project Blue Book for the United States Air Force back in the 50s and the 1960s. And in a lot of the ways that MUFON will train you and train their people to hi, Susan, how are you doing? We'll train you to be a good field investigator, to use have scientific values, and a lot of that we actually use Hynek's classifications on cases and things like that. But it's like Paul, he's a second generation of that. Other good friends of mine, Kenneth Arnold's granddaughter, Chanel Shands, her grandfather was the man who came up with the term flying saucer. He's the first guy that ever reported a fleet of UFOs flying.
My cat wants to join us. Sorry.
Now I had to give my cat treats to get him out of here, because as soon as the door closes, he starts pawing on it. He wants to be part of podcasts, but no,
I know. When they walk over the keyboard, I just like, So sorry for that. Carry on.
But let's talk about Mom. I already went off track here. Now, it was not news to our family. Everybody knew that Mom had worked back in the 1950s. She worked as a personal secretary for Howard Hughes, the millionaire. Wow. She worked in his Hughes aircraft facility. There was he had his film studio that was in Hollywood, but his main love, of course, was aerospace. At that point, it was mostly aeronautics. We weren't going into space in any way, shape, or form. But that was, my mom started working for him in the early to mid 1950s, and we all knew that. It was wasn't news. And she had some interesting stories from that time period. But one day, way back, and I'm kind of an old coot, okay, and 1963. I'm going to talk about 1963 because I remember it. All right. One of the guys saw that I did watch the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. That'll give you an idea of my age. We'll be 66 now. And it's I'm proud
fabulous.
of whatever wrinkles I've earned.
Yeah.
But I sat down for breakfast. One of my earliest memories, and I think my mom knew that I had a propensity and a love for outer space. This was our backyard. That's myself climbing up the monkey bars. And one of my first memories is before 1963. It was maybe a year or two before. I'd climb up to the monkey bars, and I remember her shouting out the window that you see there, the kitchen window. Earl, who are you singing and waving to up there? Because I was sitting up there, and I would climb up there, and it was like a regular thing for me. And I answered her. I said, "It's the space people, Mom. I'm singing and waving to the space people." And so this, it's like, I think,
carry on.
My mom knew. My safe place when I was a little kid. I'd make a fort with books like children will do, but I would always find the Time Life books with satellites and pictures of Jupiter and Saturn, and outer space was my safe place, and I would build my little fortress with that and play army men or what have you. So she knew there was something different about me, I think, and I think maybe there was a reason why. 1963, I was getting ready to go to school, kindergarten. I was getting ready to go to my kindergarten class, sat down for cornflakes. And my mom sits down across from me. And I'll never forget this, ever, ever, ever. It's such a distinct memory. She sat down and she said, "So, son, well, you know that I used to work for Howard Hughes. And everybody knows that. But I had a really strange job that people don't know about." And she started talking with me, and the more she spoke, it was like she was speaking with another adult. So it really caught my attention. She wasn't using, like the baby kind of talk language that you would talk to your kid in.
Yeah.
She told me that they took her out without giving her any preamble, no warning, to the middle of nowhere. She said it was the Great American Desert. And I was never able to get her to say exactly which desert. Yeah. I have some suspicions, but that they took her out to the middle of the Great American Desert. And she said, and I'm looking around, and the only thing that was there was this shack. She said it was a concrete shack, like a bunker. I don't think she used the word bunker, that she used concrete shack. And she said, it made me confused. I didn't know if they were taking me out to look at tractors or what the heck could be out there, some water pump. I didn't know. But it was all locked up, and they sent me with security guys. She said that they opened this thing up, and the only thing that was in this bunker was an elevator. And the elevator, of course, there was no upstairs to it. This was like a low-slung bunker, one story. So she knew that they were taking her somewhere that was underground. So she said that she got in the elevator. She felt a little nervous, but she thought maybe it would be a floor or two. And she said, you know, it scared me. I felt butterflies in my stomach.
Oh,
She
she going down, yeah.
she did use kind of baby language in some ways. I mean, vertigo is what she felt. She said that I felt butterflies in my stomach because this elevator kept going. And later on, she actually said in so many words that it was a mile under the desert when the doors opened up. She said when the doors of the elevator opened up, there was a little city down under the desert floor. She said that there were German rocket scientists that were working there, a lot of German rocket scientists.
Yep.
And something interesting, Werner von Braun would sometimes come on Disney or something when I was a kid. And Mom would say, that's my friend Werner. I worked with him sometimes, and he was a very sweet man. She said he used to call me Betty Grace. That was her first name and her middle name, like it was my, like one name or a pet name.
Yeah.
So I guess my mom, was friends with Werner von Braun, which is strange and it's
quite endearing, quite endearing to her. Yeah.
And but going back to 63, when she sort of did her disclosure number, she said, but son, there were people that stayed down there for long periods of time. They had cafes. She said that they had one little place that was done like a French cafe with umbrellas over the table. And she laughed. And she said, and I always thought that was funny because you don't need an umbrella in a cave, but they had umbrellas over these tables. She said that there was they had a beauty parlor. Well, no, they had a barber shop, but she said the guy in the barber shop could do my hair for me. And looking back at what she said years later, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's not like you're going to wait until you're at work and you're, a mile underground to have your hair done if you're, just visiting. So she apparently worked there for stretches of time.
Yeah, you'd have that set up if you were sort of there.
She said they got around in golf carts, and and then she, after telling me all this crazy stuff, she finished the conversation. She said, son, I know that you love outer space and you're always talking about space people. And she said, I just want you to know that we are not alone. We already know that we are not alone in the universe. They've already made contact. And she said, UFOs are actually a real thing. You're going to hear about this, but it's a real thing. They're never going to tell people about it. But your mom worked in this situation. Get ready for school, and I'll see you in a couple hours.
No. Don't stop on that one, Mum. Yeah, okay. Oh, wow.
I know. And she never really brought this up again until I was 10 years old. She did bring it up because her hand was forced. She apparently thought that I was young enough that I'd forget about this. And I think that this, later on, she would talk about the non-disclosure agreements she'd signed, and she later on in her life, and she worked as a headhunter for a corporate headhunter for aerospace companies, Lockheed, Raytheon, who else? Just all the main TRW, all the main aerospace people. And I think that maybe the reason why was because she had held on to her secret clearances. Nowadays, I don't think people know, everything about the phenomenon because they compartmentalize everything. But this was back in the early Cold War days. Mom, then but anyway, I went to school. We used to, and it was fourth grade. I was 10 years old. And on Fridays we would have show and tell. And this one particular Friday, what do your parents do? And I talked about my dad, and I talked about his landscaping business, and the kids were not very excited about it. And they're kind of yawning. And then something took over. And I said, well, let me tell you about my mom. Let me tell you about her old job. And I told them everything that she told me. And the kids, they started teasing me. Like they'd put like little Martian antennas behind my head with their fingers, and they go, woo, woo, woo. And, Earl UFOs. And it became kind of I guess, disruptive. And my teacher did a parent-teacher conference with my mom. And I didn't know what it was about. But I'm at school playing on the monkey bars again.
Yeah.
And my mom comes out and she doesn't look very happy and she's very quiet. And we walk out to the car and she said, son, she's trying to driving home. And it's only a mile away and she's having a little trouble doing it. She said, son, I'm not mad at you. It's like, uh-oh. I'm not mad at you. You didn't know that what you were doing was wrong. It wasn't wrong. I mean, except that you can't ever talk about. And then she said, my God, how did you remember you were just a baby? And she kind of comports herself again. And then she says, you can't talk about the little city under the desert. How did you remember that? And I told her, I said, well, I wasn't a baby. I was 5 years old,
Yeah, you still remember.
But
it's funny because you were saying about
she thought that I would forget
the little
and she
shed.
said, you can't talk about UFOs. And she said, if you talk about this, I talked about the whole thing. When the story I just told you, I told my class. And she said, son, I could go to prison if you ever talk about this. I signed things where I was not supposed to talk, and I wasn't supposed to tell you, not anybody, but I thought you were young enough that you would forget, but obviously you didn't. No. She was very careful. She never told my sister about that work. She did tell my son a little bit about working for Howard Hughes, but again, I mean, I think that, and later on, I spoke with somebody recently who is a DOD guy, and this guy claimed, he said, well, I've read your mother's file, and I just want you to know your mother didn't lie to you. And you can be very, very proud of your mom. You can be very proud of what she did. She was serving her country. And I asked him, I said, well, okay, so if you can, what else can you tell me? She has a file. What can you tell me? And he said, it's still sealed. I could get in trouble just telling you as much as I did. And that was kind of, so years later, my mom, we went to see Star Wars and she got talking at the end of that film again. This was when I was about 19 years old. She was back in her old part of town, sort of Santa Monica, where she was living when she was working for Hughes. She had gotten cancer a few times, which finally took her life in 1999. The sixth time she had cancer, and they were all unrelated cancers.
Okay.
But anyway, back in 1977, I accompanied her to her oncologist. She got a clear cancer, no cancer. And we went to see Star Wars since we were out. And she started talking again. And she said, well, son, you have no idea how close to the truth that film is. Star Wars is not far-fetched. Those were her words. She said, it's not far-fetched. She said, the different beings, the different spaceships, all that. It's really like that out there. But they're never ever going to tell the public. And being a 19-year-old kind of obnoxious kid, like, well, why the hell not? Why would they tell us that? That's kind of one of those basic things. What happens when I die? Is there a God, and are we alone in the universe? And she said they're afraid of how people will react. They'll react badly. She brought up the War of the Worlds radio broadcast. Yeah. And how people barricaded themselves up. And when my mom passed away, I knew I wasn't going to be hearing any more about this from her. And it was always this big, giant 50-foot question mark for me, Bridget. I heard about MUFON. I actually watched the Hangar 1 TV show that they had, which I thought was very, very good.
I think I've seen that one. I've heard of it.
Excellent show. And it was produced by MUFON. It was all MUFON cases. And I'm seeing these guys, field investigators, and you get cases and you use a scientific method as close as possible. You can't repeat a UFO experiment, right?
No,
so you can't
they're all different.
use a scientific method.
Yeah.
Proper, but that's how I became. I joined MUFON. I became a field investigator, and I just took to it like a fish to water. And my mom was wrong. It's not realer than I know. I know how real this phenomenon is.
Okay. Oh,
Thank you very much.
He's doing some
Thank
back work.
you, Race.
Thank you. No, I must watch. I haven't seen that.
Excellent show. They produced 2 seasons, and I think that the guys that at History Channel, they wanted them to like augment the cases a little bit, make them more exciting. Like a UFO sighting or abduction or something isn't crazy and wild enough. And I think that was part of the reason why there wasn't a season 3, because they really, really wanted to stick with exactitude and the facts, the facts. But that's how I became a ufologist. And I have over 1,000 cases that I've personally investigated now. So I will use the term ufologist after my name. I guess. I figure.
Good. There you are. I love the word ufologist. It's lovely. So,
Me too.
So when you were younger, then when you were playing outside, then and you were talking to the spaceman, so would you share any of that with your mum?
Well, she saw me doing that, and she saw that, my idea of play would be, make a control panel, draw it with crayons and put it on the wall and push buttons to go to Jupiter or a different star system. And later on, I found out that my mom was pregnant with me when she was working underground for years. So I don't know, maybe
you heard it all.
Something
you heard it all as
off
you're growing.
me.
Yeah, you heard it all as it was growing inside. Oh wow! Well, they do say that.
Earl, I want to jump in. I can so vibe with you on that. Like when I was little, I found a little small satellite dish in the trash in my neighborhood.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, right?
I dug it out of my neighbor's trash and I mounted it on my jungle gym. And because I made a little spaceship out of it, I still got pictures of it.
Well, that's why you're really weird, then.
That's it.
I love it. Well, that doesn't surprise me at all, Race.
Well, when you were saying about your mum going into the desert and going to this sort of like little place, little area, and she went into an elevator. Well, when I got, because you did the storming at Area 51, but when I was arrested at Area 51, when I didn't knock, but the cameraman knocked on the door. And it all went pear-shaped as from then. 2 came out, but then they all came out. There, I don't know how many there might have been, maybe 9, 10, 11 guys, but they came out from down below, coming up in an elevator. There's no other way that they could have come up, and they came up very quickly. So yeah. Oh yeah.
So
within like minutes.
You got past the guard shack somehow, and oh my god.
Shit, yeah. Yeah, with the BBC, but we're not talking about me. We're talking about you. But no, I can totally.
I want to talk about that.
No. That's another time. But I can totally understand it. Looked like a little garden shed. 2 guys sitting in there eating spaghetti, watching baseball, knocking on the door, blah blah blah. Anyway, but yes, so I understand they come up from down there. So I find it interesting that so. When you were watching things and talking to somebody, a spaceman outside, were you having experiences that you can recollect as well?
I don't know. I think that it was just some innate thing that I had within me. I think that somehow I just knew.
Okay.
I always, and the way I would think about life in outer space, I mean, the only real example on television that a kid would see would be like the Great Gazoo on the Flintstones. Even the Jetsons didn't have aliens on it, but somehow or another I just knew that they were there, and I was waving and we find, and later on in life I did have I've had a couple of experiences, one with entities and once a close encounter with a craft.
Please talk about them.
I would love to. In both situations, especially with the craft, I was driving to work. It wasn't like I was, having.
Were you on the freeway?
Paralysis. No, I was just on the street here. I was driving to my nursing job. I retired from being a hands-on nurse 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But I was
Well done.
driving to
Well done.
a home care case that I had, and I saw this thing hovering over this schoolyard, a V-shaped, boxy-looking craft. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't lit up with lights, but it was massive tonnage that was hanging over this, maybe 30, 35 feet over this schoolyard. And when I
Not
first saw it,
unusual, being a schoolyard for the
yeah,
kids.
they seem to like schoolyards.
Mm.
The first thing, being a good trained observer for MUFON, I'm thinking, okay, so how did the students hoax this? What did they hang that on, and how did they do it? Yeah, I'm looking for tethers. I'm figuring, no, there was nothing that you could tether this up with. And the closer I got to it, you could see that this thing had mass, that it was heavy.
Heavy, yeah.
But it wasn't, it's not like it had rocket engines or, I mean, it was not moving. It was just sitting there.
We've got to go for a break. I've been told off. We got to go for a break. So sit there in the sky, because they will stay there for you for a bit. We're going to go for a
Station
break.
identification.
So, and we will be back with Earl Grey and his encounter over a schoolyard. See you in a minute. Sorry, Ray.
Hey, UFO conference enthusiasts. We've got another great event for you in 2024. The Saucers and Aliens Kansas UFO Day in Dimension G is being held in the UFO capital of Kansas, Geneseo, on July 6th. This is a fun festival in the middle of nowhere. There will be a parade, decorated yards, costumes, vendors, speakers, and a showing of the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. Appropriately, an 8-foot-tall statue of Gort and a statue of Plateau will be dedicated. This will be the only museum in the U.S. with these custom-made statues. If you'd like to donate to the statue project or attend the event, visit GeneseoMuseum.com. That's GENESEO Museum.com. Be sure to bring your camera when you attend the event. That's GeneseoMuseum.com.
The UNX Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes, made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the UNX Network website at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com.
This is Margie Kay, and I'd like to say thank you to all of our KUNX show hosts, staff, listeners, and viewers for making us number 1 on Paranormal Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the Annex Network, and this is Naked Truth, and we have Earl Grey. Earl Grey, not a drink.
Hello,
we have
I'm
a
back.
real official Earl Grey. Hi, Earl. Okay, so you are
I kind
going
of tag
to
Anderson onto the end of it.
I know. Okay, because obviously Grey, we spell Grey like that here in England, but you spell it with an A. So I think I didn't know how that worked then. So
Yeah, kind of. That there's a whole story behind that, as a musician. And Earl Anderson
rock
was
and roll.
such a common well, Anderson was such a common name. And then people would say, "Oh, I get it. You're naming yourself after Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, right?" And then there was another like a R&B singer that was in LA, and we played the same venue. It was kind of solo acoustic stuff. I do a lot of
Which
fret
venue?
work and stuff as well.
Because I'm an ex-LA girl,
not
so
R&B.
which venue? Which venue?
There you go. It was at my place in Santa Monica. It's where I used to play. It was pretty popular in the 90s, and I think they might have closed doors in the early 2000s, but this was going back. But they had another guy who had a similar name to mine that played Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar, and he was pure R&B jams. Well, they mixed up our names on the marquee twice. They did it twice.
Naughty.
And I live in Santa Monica, so I couldn't go and say, "Hey, you guys need to change that." So I go to my gig, and there are all these people expecting to hear an R&B guy, and the wrong color, the wrong everything to do what he was doing so beautifully, And the same thing, they screwed up. They put my name on for his show one night. So that's I thought I need a stage name, and I was at work with one of my nursing clients. They wanted tea. Yeah, the Earl Grey is a pseudonym.
I just think it's so
It is Earl
right
Anderson.
now. It's so fantastic. It's the in thing, the Greys now. It's the in thing. It's like Orion, my son.
Well, it works.
He didn't like Orion 30 years ago, but he likes
beautiful.
it now. Yeah.
There you go. And for me, it wasn't, I was thinking of the tea. It was Earl Grey tea. It was in a client's cupboard. They wanted a cup of tea, and I'm looking at the box. I'm like, that's it.
That's a great
and it stuck though. And here I am, all these years later, and my grandkids even call me Earl Grey. So I had to, but I sort of wanted to get my actual name in there. And especially, working as a ufologist, and the gray part, it's fun. It makes me not take myself that seriously. And it's something it's a fun anecdote, but now I try to use it. But it works, I think, gray aliens. And it sort of has a nice flow, like Hans Christian Andersen, or so.
Name. And also, so as we went into a break, I was sort of like thinking about your mum's past and you going into MUFON and you having the experience that you talked about with above the school, which you'll carry on, and then another experience. If I look back at other people's experiences, it's kind of, or people, it's a bit like I had Katie on last 2 weeks ago, and she was for the ranch that she was living at, and the history behind the fact that she has documented everything, and everything was documented before as well. I just think we are where we're meant to be because of our past as well, and now, and it all helps us, doesn't it? And it's just quite amazing that your mum's background, then you went into state director for MUFON. I mean, the reports that you must have read, I mean, that today I was sort of like looking through some books and things, and I was thinking, back in the days that you had the old the reports with like the scoop marks. You don't hear about scoop marks anymore. You don't really hear too much about the alien implants anymore. There's sort of like all of the old cases, but because I remember the MUFON questionnaire, because I filled it out. I remember telling you I filled it out and sent it to Walt Andreas because he was Was he the state director of California at the time? I think he was.
Walt Andrus started MUFON.
Yeah.
It was himself and a couple of other, John Chesler and a handful of others. He was one of the progenitors of MUFON.
Well, he was. I dealt with him for quite a bit, and me and you've spoken about it. We said that we might be able to find my original report, which would be absolutely amazing. But because it was quite a big paged report, if I remember, was it like 4 pages or something like that? 4-page report, quite in depth. Wasn't a lot to be able to draw on and things like that. But what you must read must be, are we all quite unique in our sightings? From, I mean, obviously you're not going to name names or anything like that, but are we all quite unique with what we bring to the table, our stories, our encounters?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I see certain repeating patterns, and we look for markers. Yes. Especially in MUFON's experience or resource team that I'm a executive member of, and I love that. I mean,
what does that involve? What does that involve?
Phenomenology. Then? We are actually a resource group for people that don't know where to go, and we can talk about that a little bit. But when I had a contact episode, maybe a year or less after I had become a field investigator, there wasn't a whole lot. MUFON was kind of nuts and bolts. A lot of MUFON's gist was nuts and bolts ufology. And I suffered from great ontological shock. I mean, I guess I brought it on myself. I went into a meditative state, naive Earl, and I kept sending out this message, I want to meet you. Well, when it happened, I didn't really expect that it would work. And I got all the bells and whistles. I mean, the Oz effect took place.
Is
sound
this above the school?
Muffled.
Above the school? Or
No,
is this
but I will tell you.
Another in one. Okay.
They all blend together. And this is something that I learned. When I had the sighting by the school, I believe that I was targeted. I don't think it was a random thing. I think that it was another visit. Maybe they even took me, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't have any missing time, but I think that our visitors are masters of time, space, and matter. And 2 seconds for you can be 2 hours for them, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But I have no recall of that. But I do have a recall.
Because I actually said about alien errors as well, because obviously that comes into it as well. Yeah. Okay, go on then.
Well, the closer I got to this craft, and I'm driving, it's 6:30 in the morning. It's not, it's not nighttime. It's a daytime sighting. And at first, when I first saw it, I was maybe 400 feet away or
not a lot
from it. And I'm thinking properly. I'm thinking, how did they hoax this? And then I realize it's not a hoax. This isn't tethered up. This is a real deal. But time started getting strange. Sounds became muffled outside of my car to where you couldn't hear any external sounds. It was almost like they created this bubble where this experience could take place. By the time I was close enough. By the time I was close enough to it I would have had the smoking gun video and photo, and I know what to do. I'd have called up the star team at MUFON, gotten more eyes on it.
They'll say it's a fake.
Media, Oh, this wasn't fake. This was the real.
They would say it's fake, the photograph or something. Yeah.
Oh, maybe people might have. I don't know. Well, there's a reason why you don't get a lot of close-up photos, because they run the narrative. And when you get close to one, for myself, it felt like both then and when I had a contact experience with entities some years before, I experienced the same pattern and they call it the Oz effect, which was a British ufologist, Jenny Randall, came up with that terminology. Because it is a little bit like going to Oz or the rabbit hole, or Dorothy opening up the door in the Wizard of Oz, and suddenly it's color and strange, and your senses are heightened. That was the way it was for me. I felt almost like, I keep on bringing up these movies, but like, in Star Wars with a Jedi mind trick where they say, you don't want these droids. And then the person, what I realized was the closer I got to this craft, the more the more psychologically affected by this I was. I wasn't really under my own cognizance. I started, instead of pulling my car over, taking photographs, doing all the stuff I've been trained to do, theodolite photos. I have the app for that, on my phone. I didn't even think of my phone. It was like it didn't exist.
Exactly.
And this is very frustrating. The closer I got to it, the most important thing in the world was, oh my God, I'm going to be late to work. I spent all my life wanting to see one of these. It would be like, it's just so
I haven't
absurd.
got time for this, guys. Go away.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I was, and now I was like 30 feet away from this thing. It was the size of a fighter plane. It was very boxy looking. It was in the shape of a V. It was hanging there inexplicably, perfectly silent. Time seemed weird, seemed slowed down somehow.
Yeah.
And I was not being rational. I was not under my own cognizance. Instead of stopping my car, I drove past that miracle as fast as I could. And last thing I did was I turned my head, I looked at it. And this is why I think maybe something more happened. Because I turned my head to look at it again, and it should have been 30 feet away. Now it was like a mile away. It was 10 times its original size. So this thing had suddenly shape-shifted or become different somehow. Or maybe it was a different craft altogether. There was like maybe a time discontinuity that happened. So perhaps they did. I don't know. Maybe they took me. I don't know. And
so
I
you
haven't
saw
been
it from a
hypnotically
few
regressed.
different angles. You saw it from a few different angles. And so you're seeing it as you approach. And then as you're going past, you're seeing it from another angle. But it was impossible what it did. It was suddenly a mile away. And it was like 10 times. It was almost the size of like it was like the size of a football field. You hear that expression a lot. Exactly.
That's what it was.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay.
And I kept driving. I was about 3 miles further away from where that was, where I saw it, when suddenly you could hear external sounds again. Everything seemed normalized. And I was so aggravated and angry at myself. And I pulled my car over.
Yeah.
I get out, and of course there's nothing there now. The action was over. Yeah. And I'm like face palming, I'm the worst ufologist in the world. I just had the smoking gun video and photo and everything. And but I was afraid of being late to work. I didn't even put in a MUFON case report because I was embarrassed.
Oh.
When I had time to think about it, time to ruminate on it, other cases have come to me where it's been similar for people. And I realize now that there's nothing I could have done, that they were running that narrative.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that was my UFO sighting, the only one that I've ever had. I've
then go back, and then you before that one you had beings. You said
yes. That was after I had been working for MUFON for about a year. And I had some cases under my belt. And I was trying to see E5 thing, but I wasn't messing around. I didn't want to see like a little light in the sky. I wanted to see beings. And I'm thinking, tall Nordics or some nice aliens, and maybe they'll give me a secret.
They're not all pretty.
Secret of the universe or what have you. But I went upstairs to our little bungalow, and my wife was already asleep. And this was the first time I ever experienced the Oz effect. I'm leaning back I had a bunch of pillows. I like to sleep semi-recumbent. And I'm sort of lying down, and the wall starts swirling in front of me. Time became strange. You couldn't hear external sounds. We had a cricket chorus in our rafters, and suddenly the cricket concerto is nowhere to be heard. It was perfectly silent. And they literally came through the wall. It was beings. It was the small grays. It scared me to death. They were not being communicative with me, would not communicate. Okay. To the best of my knowledge, they took energy and maybe took blood.
What makes you think that?
And they left this. same way they came in. They didn't walk. It was like they were pulled backwards through this portal, a hole that they came through in the first place. What makes me think that I remember them putting
Took
tubes
blood.
on me, and I
No.
remember
Oh,
feeling like I was
okay.
going to pass out.
Okay, so can you?
I remember feeling like I was going to pass out.
Is that too personal? Did you want to talk
Well,
about that?
later on, I talked to a friend of mine that's one of my interesting friends, worked at Skinwalker and stuff back in the day. And I mentioned, well, it's weird they didn't take my DNA. And she said, well, what do you think your blood is? That's the purest DNA you can get. So maybe they did want my DNA, but I didn't have scoop marks. I mean, I didn't have, and I mentioned that. I said, well, there were no marks. So maybe it was just like this energy suck thing. And she said, well, no, there's other ways that they take blood other than a needle. You know, that's kind of human, the human way of taking blood. But
they do
there's
use
other
needles
ways
as well. Yeah.
I think that they're storing up human DNA, that maybe we're afraid we're going to destroy ourselves. And if we do, maybe they'll plant us here again once the radiation dies down, you know. I mean, what I know, you know, by all the many cases, the many experiencers I've spoken with, and we're talking about doctors and psychologists and scientists and people that worked at Lockheed and people that, you know, these are all serious people that have stories like my own. And they're
great
usually
backgrounds
told
as well. Yeah, with great backgrounds as well.
When people are left with communication, it's usually three. It's like I call it the trifecta of telepathic messages. They will usually say, and this happens to military people a lot. A Marine that was taken through Camp Pendleton barrack roof to a craft. Another guy that was taken through the decks of an aircraft carrier that he was a corpsman on. They said that they had telepathic communication, and what they're told was, war is wrong. We don't understand it. We don't understand why you do this to each other. Nuclear war is insurvivable. So stop it. Don't try it. Okay, that's number one. Number two, stop trashing your world like it's replaceable. It's not replaceable. This is a beautiful world. It's your world, but you know, stop thinking that you get another one, because this is it. And number three is better yourselves, raise your vibration. We hear that a lot. Dr. Medich, who kind of runs the ERT at MUFON, you know, for the longest time, it's like, what's this vibration thing? You know, he was thinking literally, you know, they wanted people that had a dopamine deficiency or shaking or something.
No, it's not that. But, you can't take the pills to get that vibration.
But no, it doesn't sound like an invasion to me. It sounds like a concern for us. And you turn on the news and I'm concerned for us. And so maybe that's what all the DNA extraction was about.
Well, as you're here and you're state director, so like I said, you've been through lots of questionnaires, well, 1,000 reports of questionnaires. I wanted to know personally about alien errors. That I find quite interesting. What have you come across with alien errors that they've made?
You know, you hear stories of, you know, even Kathleen Marden talks about being taken. You know, she is a abductee, contactee experiencer. And what she remembers is that there was an apprentice who was being taught to bring the people through the window or through the roof or however they would take them to the craft, and that he screwed up and dropped her on the table and it hurt her back. And she had to later go on and ask her, because she is a repeat visitee. She had to ask them, could you please heal this? Because now I have horrible back problems and you guys caused them. So that was an error. I have one case of a guy who was a bouncer at a club in Hollywood. His girlfriend finally left him. I met him when he was heartbroken. He put in a MUFON report that he was being taken through the roof of his apartment, and his girlfriend witnessed it, that it physically happened, and she saw him rising up. And so she broke off their relationship. But he was dropped. And when I met him, I have photos of half of his body was a bruise. And he said that they were bringing him through the ceiling like usual, but the ceiling was not semi-permeable yet. It was like a hard ceiling, and he slammed into it and went crashing back down onto the bed frame. That sounds like a mistake. It's a little bit like Kathy, what happened to her. But this guy had bruises over half his body. I mean, he looked like he'd been in an industrial accident. I had to ask him, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm a bouncer at the club.
Yeah, so he's used to it. He's used to it. He's a tough guy. Yeah.
This guy was all built up, and I don't think anybody had beaten this guy up. But, I mean, this big guy with muscles that's a bouncer in the clubs, and he's kind of crying there.
Do you think they're deliberate, those mistakes, in some ways, to make you either remember or to they do it deliberately for a reason?
I can't answer that one.
That's been on my mind. It's just been on my mind, because it's like you don't really. Well, you do. I haven't heard of anybody being. I haven't heard of anybody being crashed down onto a bed and broken anything, so that's new to me. But I don't
think they're here to hurt us, but you do run into people now where it seems like repeat visits, or if you're too close to a UFO too many times and things like that we do see kind of an unfortunate tendency for people to have like immune system problems, or sometimes MS like problems, nervous system problems. I mean, I had to stop working as a nurse because after my first encounter, my feet started going numb like a diabetic, but I'm not diabetic. And they tried to figure out, it's like, well, maybe it's one of your discs is pinching something. And they went through the whole elaborate thing, this neurologist, of putting, electrical shocks through my whole body to try to pinpoint it. And they could never figure out what the origin of it was. It hasn't gotten worse. It's just kind of the same, but that I kind of attribute to possibly having had that close contact. You see, I
never really thought about the repercussions. I mean, I know that I suffered from radiation.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, and
a lot of people.
And I totally told my doctor that I had a UFO encounter. But in my under the hypnosis, well, I'll either call her Jane or I'll call her Kelly. Under the hypnosis, she was put in the back seat, and then as I'm then driving away, she's now in the front seat next to me, but in the hypnosis she was put in the back seat. So I just find it, it just intrigued me what other errors that they have made. But I don't
think they're gods. They're they're more advanced than we are. Their technology is obviously more advanced. It's like magic. I mean, I think of Arthur C. Clarke's quote, he said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Oh, that's correct. Yeah, that's a great line, isn't it?
That's my favorite quote, I think.
Yeah, it is.
And it's true. It seemed like magic both times that I've had contact. And I will say, being close to a craft or the beings, I experienced the same effects, the same time dilation.
There's nothing like it in this world. I know and that's a great little pun, but there isn't, is there? It's just remarkable, and it's beyond comprehension. And I understand why you didn't want to take your camera out, or even if you had your camera there, because it's so everyone's going to say it's so personal, and it's like, F everybody, it's not about that. It's about you. It's about what you're witnessing. It's your and all of the thoughts going around in your head.
I think if they're far enough away from you, you can get off a photo. Because I know a few people. One guy in the UK that has a beautiful photo of a flying saucer going into a portal, and I mean, it's like this black smoke ring kind of thing.
Oh, you must let
reminds me of the Rex Heflin UFO. I will. I can. We'll talk later about that. And
you've got a few minutes. You've got a couple of minutes to tell me whatever you want to tell me. You've got 2 minutes.
What else could I tell you? That's
I don't know. No, well, it is a lot.
You got the
It is a lot.
the everything bagel in 1 hour
The
there.
full bagel. I'll have a lox bagel and cream cheese, please. Thank you
It's
very
pretty
much.
good.
That'd be lovely. I love lox bagel and cream cheese.
This
I
is
miss
the
that.
everything bagel.
I know. Are you a part of the Hollywood disclosure? Are you doing that with Steve Bassett? We got a picture of
Yes,
you
I
and Steve
am.
Bassett, actually. Okay. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. So what will you, and you're going to be speaking at MUFON this year as well, aren't you? At the
I'm speaking both at the symposium that's in July in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas.
Wow.
And I'm also speaking at Contact in the Desert, which is in the high desert here of California.
Katie will be there
near
as well. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Lovely.
Sweet.
Katie, Nick's there. Rich, everyone's there, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
I know. It'll be good to finally meet. Well, I've met Rich a couple of times, but it'll be nice to have a little time there to hang out. And he's another dear friend of my dear friend, Peter Robbins. So,
I know. He's my dear friend. I've got
community.
Peter on next week. Oh, he's well,
sweet.
when I went,
say hi for me.
I certainly will. But when I went to go with Nick Pope to Bud Hopkins, obviously that's where I met Peter. Yeah, he's such a love as well. He is such a love. And actually, so well, it's good. We've had ours cancelled here in England, our UFO conference, which is very sad.
I'm sorry.
There are a few people in the background trying to make some noise, trying to do something else, and hopefully, fingers crossed, there are things that are going to be put into place. But I know it's just mainly America.
UK is a hot spot.
Well, it's funny because I was listening to a podcast. These two guys talking goes, well, there's nothing really ever happens in England.
That's not true at all.
And I'm thinking, where have you been for the last 30 years? And the rest, we just...
I write a regular column for the Outer Limits magazine. That's a UK. The Gray Files. So if you guys go to Outer Limits magazine, you can read my regular column there. And every 2 months, he publishes bi-monthly, and I present another case. This month, I diverted a little bit. I talked about the terrible Arrow report that Sean Kirkpatrick released as he left the building like Elvis.
A lot of talk about that, A lot of talk about that. Yeah.
I was very angry. The editor of Outer Limits, he had to calm some of my language down. He was afraid of litigation because I was not happy at all with Mr. Kirkpatrick. But
I'm the biggest swearer around, so don't worry about it. Actually, I don't think I've sworn tonight. I usually do. I've got a total potty mouth. So I think we are going to have to go now. So I'm really no. Thank you so much, Earl. Thank you so much for being a part of coming on to my show. And you're going to have to come back because actually I'm going to put a few people together and do a little panel, which I think will be quite fun. It'd be like the Partridge Family, and we're all going to be here and here and here. So it's going to be like our own little...
I'll be David Cassidy. Conference. You could be Suzanne Day,
Yeah. All right. So... thank you so much, Earl, and I wish you all the very best. I know you're so busy filming. I know that you're everything. So what were you doing with Steve? What were you doing with the picture? I think there's a picture. I think because it looks such fun. It looks so fun. It looks so fun. I don't know if Race can put it on, but it looks so fun.
Steve has a new show called Paradigm Shift, and so the original episode. It was he got an hour of Earl Grey just like you did. We talked,
An hour's never enough. There he is. He's such a nice guy. Steve
Love Steve. Such a great guy.
He's
fun to hang out with.
Oh, isn't he just? And he just doesn't give up, does he?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
People just sort of like stand back and he just goes for it. But that's absolutely, he's such a nice guy. I mean, I think we actually have some very, very strong characters within ufology, and I think that's what's really important. And also for yourself, the humor side to it. You have to do that. I mean, or else you just go absolutely potty. But when you're trying to think of all of like the scenarios and whys and what ifs and why didn't I do this and why that, you need to stand back and you need to have a good person at that end of that phone to sort of like ground you and say, well, it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? So, and the fact is, as a state director for yourself, how amazing for people to be able to come to you.
Have a wonderful
and to be able
team.
to, yeah, you do.
Wonderful
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm so proud of them. And they're just, I know that if I hand a case over to one of my field investigators, that they are such a trained and wonderful and compassionate group that I feel like it's just as good as if I went and I had investigated that case my very self. And that's how much I appreciate and love my field investigator team. If you go to SoCalMUFON.com, that's our little local MUFON team's webpage.
And what area does that do for? What area is that for then?
Southern California MUFON, but it's SoCal, SoCalMUFON.com, and that'll take you right there.
So what's that? That's the valley, right?
Yeah, we're currently having meetings here in the San Fernando Valley. We're hoping to get closer to the heart of Los Angeles soon, but right now that's where our venue is that we have. So, and I'm very grateful for the venue that we have.
Well, I think that I need to get myself over, fly over, and get back to Brentwood, get back to my own roots, and just, because it is quite amazing to go back to where you had a encounter.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it?
It sure is. It's
sure
a pilgrimage. I drive past that area where I saw that craft every single day. There's a schoolyard, no UFO. And time is normal.
But the image is so burnt in your mind. It's like yesterday, isn't it? It's just it never goes, does it? It's just
amazes
amazing.
me.
It's funny because someone said to me, they said, "Oh, I hope it hasn't put you off coming to LA again." It's like, no, why would it? Good gosh, it's quite funny what people's reactions when they ask you these questions. I was like, no. If anything, it's just like it happens anywhere. It can happen absolutely anywhere. But yeah. Oh, Race hasn't told us to go. Oh,
no, he has.
More minutes
it's in the little comment.
Is he?
Yeah.
Is he?
It's time
has he
to
said
go.
Something? Has he
said
has
rap.
He sworn? Oh, I don't see that. Oh, maybe I didn't see that.
It says WRAP. So I'm guessing he doesn't want us to do
okay. Cuts,
R&B rap or anything. He wants us
no singing tonight, no guitars out tonight or any
thank you, Brigitte, and
like
thank you guys out there.
No.
And thank you.
Have a fantastic rest of the year, and I know that you're going to be super busy. Anybody can see the link for Earl. Click onto Earl's link, and that will go onto his Facebook page. Maybe that I can add to this description your MUFON. I think I did actually. I'm not too sure.
SoCalMUFON.com.
Yeah. Okay. Simple. I shall go and do that in a minute. All right. Listen, guys. Thank you ever so much for being here and listening to Earl and Earl's encounters and Earl's history within ufology, and being an amazing ufologist for MUFON. Thank you, Earl. And next week we have Peter Robbins because it was cancelled last week. So see you later. All the good fun guys are here. See you later, and girls. Thank you. Bye. See ya.